Hi, everyone. So we're going to talk about Cleopatra. And when we talk about Cleopatra, she's quite the enigma and the enigmatic personality. She's someone who enigments something, and it's such a play on words that when I touch my blue agate, and it's so clear to the dun, a D-U-N, you must be fun to be a Ray. And you say, what the heck came out of your mouth? So when I look at the crystal quartz, and this is scrying, she goes about in a way unknown. I see that she loved milk products, milk products. So when you have the black tourmaline, and she loved gemstones, and she loved trinkets, and I see a clear quartz, almost like a selenite with her all the time, of a Greek goddess, of a deity that always was around her that you couldn't get done. She actually was an interceptor. She was someone who would cause interference and disrupt all the time, all the time. She's seeing me Greek, she's seeing me blue, and she's seeing me do. And it's a DIEU, which is an old word to get it done, to make someone like devil-like. And the term a done in today's society is someone who actually becomes who's an innocent individual becomes a criminal because they're antagonized and they're aggravated, that they actually lash out because they just go haywire in their head. She was very good at that. So when I'm holding my selenite, you have to be a ray to be a bay to be a say. She was someone of a witchy sense, of a spell caster. So up to a high priestess at most to be done. And that's what I'm saying as a psychic. I'm just speaking very matter of fact psychic. She goes about in a way unknown. And that is so prevalent. You must be done. You must be done. So on the split of this deck, the Light Seer's Tarot, she caused a lot of chaos, actually. It was such ill rush emotions when she did things. She must, and she sat high. She sat high. Her energy is very stoic to Ptolemaic, and Ptolemaic had a lot of grace and value. So she would have been proper. She would have been someone who was very straightforward to have I just see her when she walked in, she goes, I'm here to get it done. It almost a mob like, very mob like. The Four of Wands was, it wasn't happy when she actually would arrive. It was very stone faced at times. She was almost like a compliance officer, which is scary, very scary. So my voice does fluctuate from time to time in my videos. And it's because of various things that have happened in my life. But most of the time it is a Cockney accent. And the hangman says it would pause when she would have it. She offered judgment when she walked in. It was so bad when Cleopatra would walk in. You just knew it was over. The antics were over, the game was over, the play out was over, and it was hostage like. She really incited fear. You can't have a lot of finality after she left. I see like 150 fold on her, which means that she was so gifted. It ran through for time to time, over times, and just continued with such a drive force that even in Egypt and down to Greece and everywhere that she went, it's still very chaotic. uh it's still a little bit of theft like. You can't complete something. You can't complete a contract or a task still to this day. The you can't even do reunions. You can't even do reunions. You can't get together. I feel that's why a lot of the incidences in the Middle East, especially Sudan, the in mediumship that they're showing me has a lot of issues from what she done. It was very a Bonnie Clyde-like, but she was so solo. She was so solo. She would just halt haste everything, everything. She was so skilled just upon a look and upon a word and picking up an object. And she'd say, all done. And she got her wish and she would gain out of it. And it would be such deceit, even with terms and stipend contract on the table, that it would cause such a walking away, but it would bring in new money. It would bring in new money. It was recklessness, recklessness. She sat tranquil. So she was someone who meditated a lot. She had to have a lot of balance and a lot of clearing, but there was something that she loved to do. And it was a type of gamble, a type of inhibition that actually got her in trouble. That she would get wrong messages from time to time. And they're showing me like a 3 to 4 months, she would get bad messages. And it had to do with like family that she would do, and it would seem like honor, but it would cause tower moment. I see a lot of tower moment, and I see as it is written, it shall be done. And that would be the communication, because when she came in, she wouldn't document, which is not really strange for Egypt or Greece. They're good scribes. They documented well. And it would end up stopping and hearing this type of stop of emotion that people would actually cry. It would hurt when they would cry. She caused physical pain of a type of cutout upon their mind, body, and soul. It ended up being ruthlessness at the end. The Five of Wands shows that you just and you have to forgive my husband in the background. It just it's a struggle. They would alleviate something. Sometimes she would, but she was hyper vigilant, hyper vigilant. False starts all the time with her. False starts. Yeah, and then it would be so like you get ready to do something wherever she was with a contract and you couldn't do anything. And they would say, where is the cutout and where is the logic and where is this ruthlessness? And they said it wasn't well planted. And they would say her words, it wasn't well done, it wasn't planted. And they're like, I already know. I already know. I already know. But her family was wealthy. She's showing me like in a 50 to a nil of a fourth of a bay, which means they were trillionaires, really, in today's ages, trillionaires, just from walking in a couple buildings. But they didn't have money balance. They really were. They would spend a lot of money all the time, lavish to pretensive. The Ten of Wands, they're showing me difficulty, high difficulty with her. And it not always intuitive. I see almost too solid, which means they were so too into each other. They were too gifted. They were too nosy, rosy. They were too anything that they were so solid. They couldn't do anything. They just walked and they had power and they would use the power and it would hurt. They didn't study. They weren't always well educated when they walked into a topic that was new, but they would gain a victory from a steel. And it was a type of steel that's almost a granite stone. There was a lot of toxic masculinity in her family. It's showing me. It's showing me a lot of misogyny. I see early deaths in their 20s, and it means something else when they died in their 20s. It would show that with the King of Pentacles, it was good, it was well, it was done. They sat like secure. And they would sit there, they say, no, I'm good, I'm secure, I'm good. And they well thought of, but they were delusional. And I'm seeing that they were so into each other, like folds, that it actually caused stillbirths, it caused birth defects, it caused disease of the mind. Something planted with a mind, and it's a type of herb like a cherry that's from the Middle East. The Five of Wands shows me that at times they were not in the right mindset. At times they weren't in the right frame of mind. At times they couldn't have clarity. It was a mix up. And it would cause like a civil unrest in the area. I'm seeing 50 to 100 to like 125 people at once if they walked in, because they were clear. They were clear, those other individuals, when they walked in. They're they're showing me a celebration, not a partnership like the Two of Cups usually shows. The celebration with Cleopatra shows me the fern leaf, the leaf, the give to it all, to it none. It was a cup, a chalice. It's so old, it's hard to see in a remote view of what she's trying to show me. A young woman in her 20s, not related. She's almost like a Diana. And she says her name like Diana, where you couldn't be unbeknownst in that celebration. They said that was the demise of them. That was the absolute demise. They did a hiccup and a mess up, and then we were able to isolate them. I see the red wine, but it wasn't red wine. It was almost like a red vinegar that they drank to get rid of a type of infection that's like a yeast infection that they had seen and they could smell. They had such grandiose thoughts, but they had no pretense of a medical condition, as she's explaining to me in her own words. It was a fight and a flight by night with a Knight of Wands in reverse to the Page of Wands, where you couldn't like do a whim or a spur of the moment. You couldn't have any fun when you were with them. So let's look at this Pleiadian oracle, because I see something with astronomy to an alignment with a star. All right. The clarity of mind with the individuals that walk in have nothing to almost a timeline jump. They acted like royalty when they walked in, to where we said, where did you come from? They would actually speak to them even to that time of, where did you come from? Did you come from another being? Did you come from another like space center? Did you come from it? Like, because it's literally showing mothership. And I have to say, where did this come from? So when I hear sound codexes, I hear like a frequency around them, like a humming, buzzing. It was disturbing, when Cleopatra and her family would come in, and it came from the father mostly. And the mother was just like complete sound dim. I see a lot of broken bones, like a fifth dimensional access, like a head injury to a higher type of consciousness with them. At times you have to say forgiving and forgiveness. Let me tell you, when they had an opportunity for portals, because they truly were astronomers, truly into astrology, to everything, that when they used the portals correctly, you just like it would slam you in the face like lightning. So when I'm seeing this, and it is, Egyptian architecture, he's sitting because he's actually like a type of meditative state of a download of a gift of a lightning strike. Like they would actually plan this out. One just chimed in through mediumship, like rooted light. And let me explain rooted light. When they sat like that, meditative, and did actual damage to themselves intently to get an epiphany. You had to know that they were intoxicated at some point with this. But rooted light means it just went right through them. It was a disturbing force, which caused such a passion with everything that they did for months to years. And then they would expand out with that energy. Star centers. It means when they would look at the stars, they would actually do a count. They would do a mathematical procedure to get those individuals out. The sacred geometrics, they're showing me one gentleman, one physician, he said, I was more from Athens. I had seen her before. She had floaters in her eyes, as you know it today. There was like such a calling upon when you see the wolf of a praying, of a walking through the community. You had to say it stunk when it came through. So when you actually saw clusters of clouds and stars, you had to say, was it true or not? Because there was something about their aura. It was not great. When I see Merope, I still see chain. I see like staph infections there. I see they were looking for the gold. The golden egg for that timeline was something in a basket, very similar to Moses. They're showing me the river, but they're showing me a center of a type of healing, and it was more of like a sports center. It's very hard to get out. When you actually got the golden egg, it was a type of game. It was like an ostrich egg. It was disgusting. It was actually disgusting. The ostrich egg. It was very similar to the buried eggs that they have in other cultures. And then they would get married. That was how that thought process was. And when you look at transmission in this card, it says, nope, I was correct. I was correct. GI upset, that seems to be like such a common factor with these individuals, that they have such a problem with GI. You can't tell anyone that they have a GI problem. All right, White Sage Tarot. The Two of Cups comes out. And when you see it tied, like it was a binding, like a hand fasting. And I see the four cups and it wasn't happy. I see the five of swords and it wasn't a must, but it was something that was done before in this get together of a family. The Ten of Pentacles shows it was like a loss of inheritance where they struggled and they would gift each other. So I see a loss of gifts with this individual named Cleopatra. It was greed. It was absolute greed of stealing that the Ace of Cups goes, she like lost everything, like instinct, intuition, everything to the unbeknownst. Nine of Pentacles goes, you planted it well, you planted it well, because it was such a civil disrupt with a marriage that the Queen of Wands, you can't sit there. I almost have a GI upset when they walk by it as a psychic act out. It really was like they said, this is over money. There's just no way that you can have more. The Five of Cups says it's spilt milk everywhere. Yep, they just already knew. They just already knew back then when that marriage was. So everyone knows that it was Mark Antony that she had married, but I'm not seeing it. I see Mark Antony in him, but I see an Adrianos. An Adrianos, he was Greek. So Seven of Pentacles, and I'll let you think that one out. It was a Six of Swords. The Seven of Pentacles and Six of Swords says that you just couldn't even believe that came out of that story. The Knight of Pentacles says it was quite the offering. You had to say somebody set that one up because they had enough of her or them. It was so bad that you can't even talk about it anymore. You just have to sit there like this. It was not content. It was definitely not content. And that is confirmed by the Ace of Swords. Because, I mean, they sat well. They sat well. It's the King of Cups. They were balanced. They were attuned. They knew it all. They knew how to handle themselves. So was she actually married to Adrianos or was she married to Mark Antony? You can't even get it out. The clove speaks of one, I hear. The clove speaks of one. Let's see what was in numerology. So I'm going to do a little bit of cartomancy with the poker cards and see what comes out of this. The Eight of Spades says it was a must do on that setup with that marriage. The Six of Clubs says you couldn't get out of it. It's contracted. The Jack of Clubs says you had to love it out. You had to love it. It was for entertainment purposes. Purses. And that is how they would go about in the town. They would just sit there and they would just laugh when they would walk by. The Four of Spades says, who set that up? I see them like caricatures. It's like they were the butt of the joke when they set that up. It was true karma that the Six of Spades said, just cut it out. Just walk down the line and test it through to see if it's true. Because the Ace of Diamonds says it's confirmed. I'm in. The Ten of Spades is just the clover comes through unbeknownst of a way of unknown, and they would speak like that, and they weren't like that at all back then. They were so prominent when they spoke. You can't even do it. And that's all they say. You just can't even do it. And that is the theme in a lot of these videos. You just can't even do it. So that is something that is so common when it's criminal activity that you just can't do it. And we're going to say it because that's what keeps coming through. That Cleopatra was the type of criminal that was so dishonorable. And it's very hard to get that story out because it's so destructive and destructed that you can't even like say that it's a complete story. It was so intricate everywhere. So intricate. Now it's showing me waters when I'm pulling out my black obsidian runes. And it was a type of luck. So when I'm seeing a basket and I'm seeing water, her luck came from like a type of vegetable that grew there. She was she was living off herself. So almost a type of anorexia, bulimia, which I have seen before. Uh, Again, coming back, like a lot of cultures, like this is heritage and this is a state and this is culture. She was preserving something. At when it says Nadis at night, that means she was so ritualistic when she was younger, around 16, 15, 16 years old to around 19 years old. You couldn't do anything with her. I see her saying, almost like wanting to be solid, but not. Uh, Highly defensive right off the bat to around an 8 years old, started around a five and started around a three. And the three is not being shown. I do see individuals. So I see the faded rune upside down. There was a lot of ill fate that surrounded. And I do see a lake, but I see a flow and I see the Nile, but it wasn't the Nile. It was a river and it was a turntable like that gave joy. It was like a type of game that like people would sit like on a Saturday night in that time frame that would give birth. It was almost like a birthing center. Like they would look at the full moon and actually play a game like how many babies would be born. And it was a very strong game that it actually had power to where they would actually give birth around a full moon or a new moon. When they had it, when you see Soul, it actually sometimes had ill intent. Depending, it really was depending on who was there. I mean, they really ashed a lot of progress with culture and society with it. I see this a lot, even in mediumship, that I just don't even just that hurts a lot. Uh, there's like almost like a big gap opening with this. And she saw it. It was very traumatic, Cleopatra, when she saw that center, a visual type of trauma of such a rush and that she had never seen that before. That she was a runaway. And it meant something else back then. Gifted, almost gifted. So that actually, when you see Degas, when they had seen it, it was that type of civil unrest. They had that kind of like that kind of a look where they said it called upon a militia there. And everything froze to that civil unrest with the four swords that came out. It had so much power that it changed. And then they're showing me the Hebrews. And then it had wealth. It had a lot of wealth. That whole civil unrest with militia. When I see the ninth porch, I see actually like they were so powerful. They would actually induce ulcers, like GI ulcers. They were so angry at them. And that's where this rune actually does signify not trolling, actual ulcer. Now they were looking for this hidden game where when you look at the wheel and you look at humans in society and human behavior, you have to say, where is the dunce of this? And when you see it, you say, who is the warrior? And when I'm seeing what we look at it today, when someone approaches onto an incident and say, who is the warrior? Who is the one that called it out and caused the disrupt even further? That is when it caused havoc. And that's when they would actually have like breakouts of a fight. So let's look at the Akashic. So this deck doesn't even really want me to shuffle at all. The Queen of Scrolls in reverse means they actually burnt so many documents during that time. They couldn't even have a continuance on. And that is what they wanted. That is what they wanted. So when I see the Uriel and the Sphinx in reverse, I see messengers at bay when you see at first, but I see a looking upon all the great structures for a type of answer unknown to get it done. And it was always somehow in the fall. So in mediumship, after that, I won't shuffle anymore with it. I hear screaming in the back in mediumship, far, far away, that it's not on track. It's not on track whatsoever. The reflection pool truly was in the water if you could see yourself. Till you had no more lookouts in the hay towers and the high towers, that there was no hay and there was no garden. And I see a book where they actually would break up fated meetings and turn it into destiny to end a chess game of a war game. And it made no sense. It slowed down so bad during that time of militia and civil disrupt there, as I'm showing you, it was so high intense to that slowdown that there was nothing to be given. That this bird's nest in reverse says, just don't, don't even. There was no more diversity. Everyone was the same because they couldn't tell the difference. The journey, you couldn't travel. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't set your course. Everyone was the same. So what was it? It was something written that was found during a fire, and it's a midday describer where when they looked at it and said this was profound, it was profund, it was profit bound, it was done. And they said, look at this. Why is it spelt this way? Where the path was so unknown that they ran with it. And that was the rise of the families in Egypt. So when I'm looking at the Ark of the Covenant card in reverse, the temples were so nasty at times to keep at bay what had happened that they no longer trusted the increscent moon. And when you can't trust the increscent moon, that means you're willing to cut out no matter what. Because that War of the Roses was like so point blank that they're just throwing it. They're showing me they would just throw the paperwork down. The King of Scrolls, you couldn't even document, set in stone to forever be. So let's go to the star seed. It's highly intuitive oracle. It wasn't a counterintuitive, one gentleman said, and he looked 21, but really he was about 19. He said, I'm 19. But really he was 14 at that time. They had so much call-in support that they had to learn all the gifts of those families, of that militia, that it was a soul plan. They had to determine if it was fated or if it was destiny, if it was meant to be. Because when I see Hiereth, which is an alchemical symbol, they would levitate and they would elevate and they would transcend, which was not a good thing for someone who had criminal intent. To where they would like heal, and they're saying regenerate, we would regenerate. So how would they do that? Because there was no time for rest. They rested within. That's why they set it in stone. It was so harsh in Egypt to all those areas of Northern Africa that set in stone. When we see the hieroglyphs, it was such a story that they made them remember everything and that they would do it again against all none. And it's a type of spelling of an omen that the children would say, no, you're not doing it. That it would be a void of something. So what was so heinous that they had to do that, that we have to say, was it initiated by Cleopatra? Because this is what the story is about, the psychic reading. So when you see transmission and you see activation, how were they activated? How were they? And it truly was a type of connection that was odd, very odd. They were all leaders, solo leaders. And when they were grounded, it was usually a 7 to 9 to a 10 to a type of nun, and nun meant 44 people within one. And it was a type of protection that was so disgusting that you could tell that there was a lot of birth defects that they talked about. The unconscious to the subconscious was so damaged upon autopsies that they could hear the humming like a locust. It was that was more than enough for me. I just had to tell them in mediumship, that's more than enough for me. It's so multifaceted that you just can't really talk about it any further. So we'll close out with the wood rounds. We'll have to do a part two on a softer version, potentially. Havoc, Havoc. And that was, they're showing me Bonnie and Clyde again, a little bit softer. So they see the wheel of the car that was riddled. I see the number 22 with them, but really it was a 132. It was so faded. It's a type of connection of a linear clear. So when you see a linear clear in physics, it means sine and cosine and tangent were not a real. And when that means that when it goes to pi, 3.14, it goes to something of NONE. And because they were so well-rounded to unprofound geniuses, that this was nothing new of alchemical symbols and mathematics and science and everything that was easy to ash something. And I keep hearing that ash it, ash it, ash it. That type of heritage. But in reality, it gives a lot of power. It gives a lot of power to where you say, when is it time to do that power? Not right now, because they were so dirty. They did it improperly. Their ends through each other. They had STDs. They had degenerative bone disease, but they were powerful. They knew it. That's where they're like, we have to actually cauterize you. And they're like, no, 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 yeah, because it would be felt. They were like, that's our wealth. You got gangrene. You got to get it out of you. That's what they're showing. And then we're showing me with Bonnie and Clyde again. They're saying that it it was so simple. It was just so simple of that rundown that they were so sick. You couldn't tell that they were sick because they were amped, highly amped. That was where that flow of power was. So when I'm seeing it in a different perspective as a psychic, I see it just as they had nothing at the end. They had nothing. So when I bring it back to Cleopatra, she was so love struck, she said, but really a run struck, had nothing left to give or lose. That when she drank something, it was so bad that her body degenerated, that she had to have certain things. It was almost like a hospice deal with her. It didn't take much at all. It was so defensive that you had to say, that is where the joy was. It wasn't so much that it's almost like an end of life, a terminal restlessness that she had, that they had to give her something because she was nasty, combative, and she was like that already because of I hear kumata, the kumata, which was the uprising of a nil non niche, which is so heinous. It means you make you like nothing. That's what it means in common law, to where you're just there living. She left her mark. She left her nun. She had someone of a habit, and that's when she started getting out a lot more. And then she would stop and freeze. It was 1 to 4 years she was like that. They had to put her away because when she was letting go of all this incidences that she had collected over time, and I'd see almost a 49 years old, it was trolling comical that it was not comical at the same time. It would still cause freezes, and they would just go, here we go again, here we go again. And then we'd have uprest. So that is where it changed highly with the medical field on how to litigate and mitigate that type of behavior of someone who's losing everything at the end, where it was okay to give someone at the end to make them obtunded and not speak, but it's against their will. It's against their freedom as an individual, but they're harming everyone. They're harming everyone. So when you actually look at Rideau and you actually see uh the wagon and the horses and everything, and it would do an upkick of the horseshoe in the roads, it caused more militia to rise up. So when it came through at night, that's when you saw it the most with her. That's when you saw it the most with her. It was such a gift at night to just sit and observe her. It made huge pivotal movements with politics. It made huge pivotal moments with medical anatomy and physiology, how everything went. It gained strength for ages to come. And I see that young children who were gifted properly, born like that they were like the birch tree. Oh, don't waste the one that's like the birch tree. Such luck that upon a look, they would actually use their gifts. So going back to the Blue Agate, when you see it clearly, was she actually a criminal? Or was she someone who went haywire when she saw a criminal act and she couldn't get it out? Because when criminal activity or trauma comes through you like a velocity and you process that through your eyes, to the optic nerve, to the occipital, and it contains mind, body, and soul, can you actually get it out in a lock? So unfortunately, the ending for her was not the best of ending. But then they say something like that, you have to say you must respect the individual to the highest degree of none, because she has won to be it none and no any. And that's all I have to say about Cleopatra. With that being said, have a good evening. If you have any questions or concerns, go ahead and email me or send me a message. Talk to you all soon.